I'm calling to order the Finance and Administration Committee meeting of June 11, 2009. Will the minute taker please call the roll?
Alderman Shockey. Here. Alderman Winger.
Here.
Alderman Eugene Wesley. Alderman Cadella.
Here.
Alderman Police.
Here.
Alderman Coles.
Here.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Here.
Alderman Lewiton.
Here.
I declare a quorum. I make a motion to approve minutes dated May 28, 2009. Is there a second?
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is item number 4, discussion of the selection of engineering consultants. And with this, Mr. Murmas, would you wish to take us through?
Actually, there's a legal opinion from Attorney Bond in the packets that you all should have read, and I think Manager Douthwaite called the City Council on this and kind of explained the memo to them. And Manager Douthwaite also requested that Attorney Dixon be present tonight if you had any questions about this. So I'm just going to turn it over to her.
As I commented before the meeting started, I think that this is one of our finer legal opinions because I think everyone should be able to, not too much legalese in here, everybody should be able to understand. I guess the question had arisen as to how the city could properly engage an engineer for various projects. And as the members of the council are ever vigilant of the city's tax dollars, there was some thought that perhaps we could bid things to see if we could get the best engineering services for the best price. But in fact, Illinois law prohibits the bidding of engineering services. It's a professional service, and what Illinois law prefers that you do is select the best qualified engineer for city services, and best qualified doesn't always recognize least expensive. And it is my understanding that the city has followed Illinois law on this and that the city does maintain a list of city engineers that are approved for work to be done by the city or for the city, and that when projects arise, city staff selects the appropriate engineering firm from the approved list. And that is in keeping with the law. Did anyone have any questions on this issue after reading the memo?
Alderman Shockey?
Yes, the memo says it's approved engineering consultants list.
Yes.
We're not approving a list of engineers or construction companies, just consultants.
I believe you've approved a list of engineers, engineering firms, to do projects, engineering projects for the city.
But it says consultants.
I'm not sure what page you're...
The first page on the memorandum. Approved engineering consultant
I'm sorry.
list.
I was looking at our legal opinion. You're looking at a different document that I didn't see. You know, maybe
think we
Jeff
have
can
two-
address this. It says approved engineering consultant list, and my guess is consultant is sort of a superfluous phrase in this because this is a list of known engineering firms and those of which that I am familiar with have various specialties. So these are engineering firms, not necessarily using the phrase consultant. Jeff, you can maybe address the title of the memo, or, well, Mr. Graff. Yeah.
Mr. Graff?
I guess I just wanted to clarify, we're not talking about contractors here who would be doing construction. We're talking about consulting engineering firms.
Any other questions? Okay, before I make the motion, Mr. Graff, what's the not to exceed amount you're looking for in the motion for the Engineering Resource Associates?
For the Oak and Powder water mains, and that's for design and resident engineering, construction engineering services, the not to exceed amount is $40,245.
$40,245. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make that motion. I make a motion to recommend that council reaffirm the pre-approved consultants list and approve the city engineer's recommendation to select Engineering Resource Associates for design of the aforementioned project for a not-to-exceed amount of $40,245. Is there a second?
Second.
On the question? So, nothing further on the question,
Although I do have,
Mr. Mayor?
sorry, I have a different question. SEC is marked as pending. When you say you're approving the list, is that including SEC, or is there something that they need to submit, or just so we're clear?
okay, Mr. Graff, does SEC need to submit anything? Where are they pending?
Well, I guess at the time Gary Holm put this list together, they were still in the process of being approved or being hired, but they're actually under contract with us now doing the treatment plant study, and we went through a pretty extensive interview and consultant selection process. I guess I would consider them to be on the list.
Sure. And it's my understanding, this is a process where if an engineering firm wants to be on the list, they can apply, and the list will change as we go along. It'll come back to council for approval, and we'll go forward. So with nothing further on the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is report and recommendation, the Village of Bensonville 4th of July Parade for participation and request for donation. Mr. Murmas?
Yeah, this is an item that the mayor had brought up at last week's council meeting. I had the finance department go back in the past and look if we did in fact donate to the city of Bensonville, the village of Bensonville. And I believe that we did previous to 2005. I believe that the idea was, since we weren't doing 4th of July fireworks, most of our residents would go over there and we would participate in some of the cost sharing. But I really wasn't able to find any hard evidence of that, just kind of everybody thought that's what we did in the past. So I don't know, Mayor, if you have anything to add to that.
Let me emphasize the participation and not the request for donation. I did receive a phone call from Mayor Soto, who has invited Wooddale, including the Veterans Organization, the social organization, to participate in their 4th of July parade, as well as the police department and the public works department, particularly the sprayer truck. And I think what I'd like to recommend to the council is we participate in the parade. We participate with the police department, our public works, and certainly the aldermen pass out the candy, but we do not contribute at this point to the fireworks. Maybe that'll be discussion for a future day. His theory was that the three towns, Elmhurst, Bensonville, and Wooddale, would come here for Memorial Day, that we would go there for July 4th, and we would go to Elmhurst for St. Patrick's Day. But those details still need to be worked out among the councils and the mayors. He's also requested, and I've contacted the police chief regarding our CERTs, our Citizens Emergency Response Team. If they can volunteer their services, that would save Bensonville considerable expenditure and overtime by helping the parade route and blocking off streets. And my understanding is the chief has mentioned that to the CERTs group, and they have a sign-up sheet going around for volunteers for that. So I think that should probably be the extent of our participation at this point.
Yeah, I agree. It's very comprehensive, and we're definitely helping out. Mr. Murmas, do you need a motion of any sort for this? Okay. Next item is items to be considered at future meetings. A, wind sculpture material installation. Item B, IMRF 1,000-hour standard. Item C, IMRF elected official qualification under 1,000-hour standard. Item D, IMRF inclusion of section 125, contribution to pension calculation. Item E, purchasing manual. Are there any other items? With that, I make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? On the question, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Selection of engineers.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I had it on. Okay. We're going to discuss the new vehicle mechanics. Mr. Kramer is going to take over and see what's going on.
Thank you,
Okay?
Alderman Coles. Staff was asked to provide information regarding a budget item that was previously identified, which was the addition of a equipment mechanic. And I've prepared a presentation this evening on PowerPoint to show that. The gentleman to my right, in case all of you don't know, is Bruce Morong. Bruce is a 25-year veteran for the city of Wooddale. He is currently acting in both capacities of plant maintenance supervisor and vehicle maintenance supervisor, supervising 5 full-time employees in both those departments on 2 separate sides of town. Plant maintenance department is located at 269 West Irving, and vehicle maintenance 720 North Central. Bruce, like I said, has been with the city 25 years. Prior to his coming with the city, he was a vehicle mechanic by trade, came to the city in capacity of plant maintenance supervisor, and in 2005, with the one employee retirement of a vehicle maintenance supervisor, the city then decided to have Bruce supervise both departments. In kind of going with some of that history, I wanted to just make note that in 2005, we did have a supervisor, a working supervisor in vehicle maintenance, which accounted for approximately 2.5 mechanics then in vehicle maintenance. Since the local 150 came into the Public Works Department, we lost the ability to have a working supervisor by our collective bargaining unit. So Bruce has been the administrator for those 2 departments, but unfortunately cannot use his trade on a day-to-day basis within the Public Works Department and vehicle maintenance garage in doing so. I think it's important to point out as well that the vehicle maintenance department, since losing the supervisor and capacity of being able to be not only a mechanic, plus also a administrator, clerical staff, that department has increased in size, and I'll show that in the presentation. I'm going to move on to the PowerPoint presentation. I apologize for the dark screen. I guess we lost a bulb today in the projector, and it's a little dark. So in front of you, you do have the exact presentation that I'm going over today. So please, if you have any questions or anything that you can't see, let me know. I'm just going to go through some facts for Vehicle Maintenance Garage, or VMG, for fiscal year 08-09. The Vehicle Maintenance Garage completed 612 repairs or preventative maintenance jobs within last fiscal year, which is an average of 51 per month, or 2.5 jobs per day, which broken down between 2 mechanics roughly is 1.2 per mechanic. The current fleet within the city, and I'm going to use fleet to kind of include all equipment. We have 94 pieces of rolling stock. That includes plated vehicles, rubber tire loaders, larger trackless machines, lawnmowers, etc. And then the 123 other equipment is salt spreaders, plow blades, handheld pumps, chainsaws, weed whips, and a myriad of other equipment that I have a list here today as well. If I need to put that up on the overhead, I can do so. 84 drivers pretty much encompass the city staff, and last year we put on about 454,000 miles on the vehicles that we have. The purchase value of those vehicles, of the 94 actual rolling stock, was $3,428,786. So we have quite an extensive fleet that's fairly expensive and very technical in nature, and requires quite a few trained staff to do that. And moving on to trained staff, our mechanic ratio is 108.5 vehicles or equipment to 1 mechanic. Additional facts: 254 working days per year on average, or 21 days per month. Given that we have 2 mechanics, and looking at it on a shift basis, 2 mechanics per shift, or 42 shifts per month, with vacations, personal days, etc., 63 days, there was only one mechanic within the vehicle maintenance garage, which is approximately 25% of the time. So if you consider that one mechanic is responsible for all the clerical work, answering the phones, running to get parts, that takes up a significant amount of time of one's day. We estimate that the union contract states you have a 7.5-hour workday. We estimate that in theory, we would like to see our mechanics working 7 hours hands-on, a half hour being wrap up at the end of the day, equipment prep perhaps for the next day, documentation, phone calls, etc. Average hours per job equates out to 5.24 hours per job, which includes not only repairs, but also preventative maintenance. Average pending repairs per month. This is kind of the need that we saw for requiring or asking for the proposed new mechanic was the carryover that we see in vehicle maintenance from month to month. The amount of jobs that either are written up by staff or departments and not completed in that month. Right now, we see an average for last year of 39.2 jobs were carried over from each month. Now, that's not to say each vehicle was carried over each month, but on average, we had 39.2 jobs carried over from month to month. Average pending preventative maintenance per month or carryover. Basically the same scenario. We try and identify vehicles per month that are due to be serviced preventatively, gone over, checked with a significant microscope used on that vehicle to take a look and see what items need to be identified, perhaps for problems. And we saw a carryover of 35.6 jobs per month. On average, vehicle maintenance inspects the fleet 2 times a year. We would like, ideally, that should be done 6 times a year, or roughly every 2,000 miles. Currently, I think our average is nearly 10 to 12,000 miles a year for each vehicle. Proposed. The vehicle maintenance garage proposed 1 full-time mechanic in the 09-010 budget. After that was approved, we came up with some tabulations where we felt we could make some increases. We looked at on an average basis showing 1.2 per day, which is roughly 3.6 jobs per day total. Right now we're at 2.4. That 1.2 brings us to that 3.6 number. Increasing average jobs per month by 25. Currently, it's 51. We're looking at a 76 increase at that point. Reducing total carryover from month to month. We're looking at a 33% reduction by adding that 1 staff and decreasing the time between preventative maintenance inspections by at least 16%. Now, just some facts and figures kind of associated with numbers. The proposed mechanic salary was roughly $68,000 a year. Obviously, that's going to change perhaps by family size, et cetera, for that employee, but roughly we budgeted $68,000 for the first year. Preventative maintenance. APWA suggests that increasing preventative maintenance shows a direct reduction of costly repairs by 8%. The fuel economy, preventative maintenance by the APWA numbers shows a 10% reduction in fuel costs by having a preventative maintenance program established. And first and foremost, my original reason for proposing additional staff member in vehicle maintenance was to decrease downtime and to increase the customer service, not only for the citizens of Wooddale, but also for projects, staffing, et cetera, by having that additional mechanic to take some of the workload off of the current staff that I've tried to identify has not only been asked to do more with less over the years, but also has shown that, there was 2.5 mechanics at one time with a fleet considerably smaller. Our fleet is considerably larger than at last point. And the last and final one, preventative maintenance, has shown to increase the lifespan of a vehicle by 2.5 years. So at this time, I will open up and answer questions as far as that proposed mechanic.
Anybody has any questions? Alderman Paris?
I got one question. John, I see on this list that a couple of these other municipalities have an assistant. Is that a mechanic who does clerical work, or what's that?
The assistant that's listed on here is either a part-time employee or a seasonal employee, the way we got it from our survey.
Mayor?
When this was presented at the budget time, I recall at that time there was a 3-month backlog. If I'm reading your numbers correctly, you now have 74.8 jobs pending, which would be a month and a half backlog. So is it correct with the 2 mechanics, you've caught up a month and a half?
Mayor, I think to answer that, I think now that we're out of the winter months, we're catching up to some degree, but we're still behind. We're always behind.
And to kind of follow up on that, you say a 33% reduction in the carryover. Well, after 3 months of this person being on the job, wouldn't you be totally caught up? And then wouldn't that eliminate the need for the third mechanic?
I would eliminate, the 33% would eliminate a portion of the carryover. The carryover average that we saw last year was 39.2. We would show a reduction 33% over that, so roughly 13 pending jobs per month. So it would be down in the neighborhood of 27, 26.
But isn't the point after 3 months you'd be totally caught up?
Again, one of the things we're going to try to be is more proactive in our approach. You know, when we say we're behind with preventive maintenance, that's true, but that's basically just to do the minimum. You know, I'd like to run the place like a hospital, and it's really being run by like a MASH unit, and that's especially true in the winter. I think having the ability to be a little bit more proactive, I think we could do that.
And did you look at this possibility of hiring a part-time mechanic to help you with the overload when you have it?
Correct. We did look into that, and conferring with Human Resources, we decided that we would need to then bargain that position, add a part-time vehicle maintenance mechanic with the union during negotiations, and look to create a job description, because currently there is no job description for a part-time vehicle mechanic within the contract. We only have part-time van drivers for Dial-A-Ride.
Any other questions?
I do.
Roy?
I'm looking at your numbers here, and the Forest Preserve has 123 to 1 for, am I understanding this right? You have 108.5 to 1,
Correct.
and then the Addison one, there's 57 pieces of equipment to every mechanic.
The black totals on each of those tabulations are just stating vehicles. Unfortunately, when we did this survey, most of the towns did not respond to what we considered other equipment. They solely quoted us rolling stock, as you would call it, so plated vehicles, rubber tire loaders. They did not quote smaller light to medium duty equipment. So in the orange, the only figures we had for total equipment to make comparables were the Wooddale and then the Forest Preserve, which had upwards of 1,300 total pieces of equipment added to a total rolling stock of 177. So that's why you see the denotion that 123 to 1 is total vehicles for the Forest Preserve to 1, and Wooddale 108.5 to 1. If you look at just the rolling stock comparison, the Forest Preserve has 14.75 to 1, and Wooddale is 47 to 1. I really don't think that's a legitimate estimate. I'm sure you working for the Forest Reserve can speak to that. I'm sure you work on more than 14.7 vehicles.
We got 500 pieces of equipment just at the golf courses, so.
Correct.
So really, the orange numbers are the ones that we actually have to look at because that's the full equipment.
Correct. Yep. When you're comparing that, I wanted to compare true also rolling stock as well, because for the most part, and Bruce might correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but for the most part, the preventative maintenance and the costly repairs come from those rolling stock vehicles. The chainsaws, the portable pumps, those, yes, could be costly in the neighborhood of a couple $1,000s, nowhere compared to the cost of a flusher that may be $160,000, or a dual wheel dump truck, which may cost upwards of $100,000.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Parisi?
I remember one of the reasons why I remember voting against this was when I asked about how much are we outsourcing, it was like 30,000, but 15 or 16,000 of that was for transmissions and auto body, which we don't do. So the other 14,000, we outsourced regular work that we couldn't handle. And I said at that time, well, if we got to spend another 5 or 10,000 for outsourcing, bring us up to 25, still a far cry from the 70, almost 70,000. And that's why, for me, it was simple mathematics why I was against it. And then I'm looking at this average jobs, the way it's laid out here now, 1.2 jobs per mechanic per day. I mean, I know he's not spending 6 hours on an oil change.
That's true, but our oil changes, especially with squad cars, the wheels automatically come off. Brakes are inspected. They're really gone over thoroughly. We have to pick up and deliver these vehicles when we work on them, which also adds time. I bet you an average oil change with inspection, 2 hours minimum.
Why wouldn't the police department shuttle the car over there if they need the service? Why is the mechanic taking his time to go pick up the car? I think that's a policy decision or something that has to be looked at.
I'd like to say something.
Go ahead.
I'd rather have a mechanic go over to the car than take a policeman off the street. A policeman is more important on the street than it is driving a car over and sitting at city services while his car is worked on for 2 hours. I mean, that's my opinion. All right, Alderman Winger?
When I'm looking at the list of comparables, it does look like a majority of the municipalities either have one full-time or a full-time and assistant. So have you been able to contact these different municipalities and compare notes on what they're doing, and maybe there's certain things that we can mirror that they're doing, or do they just have a completely different environment, which makes it hard to do the comparison?
I know in the little bit of the research that I had done, everybody is different. I mean, some communities will have a secretary, for example, just for fleet, or they'll have a fleet manager, assistant fleet manager. They have not only part-time, they have summer kids. They have a whole host of different positions. Mm-hmm. We have 2 mechanics that do everything. We run the gas system by us, which does take a while as well. We administer that. We do all our monthly reports. We do monthly reports that we provide the finance department when it comes to expenditures and costs, things of that nature. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Alderman Catella?
John or Bruce, do you have any idea from these other municipalities that you surveyed here, or any others, about how much outsourcing they do? I mean, there's this ratio of full-time mechanics on staff to outsource that we might be missing the dynamic here too. That might be an important factor.
two quick side notes just on the first question by Alderman Winger. We eliminated in our survey, we also did cite other clerical staff, managers, et cetera, from this list. So if we were able to put that in place, talking extemporaneously, Forest Preserve had two administrators and a clerical staff listed on here as well. Plus, they also had one full-time body person listed, body and fender man included in that. And I believe there was one other town that also had one clerical person listed with that. We decided to take those out, so we are still trying to compare apples to apples. In answer, I jumped ahead of myself. Alderman Cadell, can I have you ask the question again?
Yeah, I was looking for some kind of a ratio between, something showing how much the other municipalities have to outsource. I mean, we're looking at 15 to 20,000, I think, is what Alderman Police remembers. Maybe some of these other ones that are showing one or two mechanics might be outsourcing 50 to 70,000. Without that may be a very important number for us to know here.
During the budget prep, I did note that, we do some outsourcing, and primarily those jobs are first and foremost body work. Any painting work, any body work needs to have a self-contained spray booth in order to do that work. So I would think most municipalities would not do enough of that to go through the cost of putting in a separate spray booth and getting somebody who would just solely to do that work. And I'm going to turn this over to Bruce in a second, who probably has a lot more information as far as that is concerned. But no, we did not look at any other comparables as far as how much they contracted out. I know that the city of Bensonville currently has 0 mechanics. The one full-time mechanic they did have did retire. So I don't even know really truly what they're doing now, if they are outsourcing all of it. But again, I'm going to turn it over to Bruce to just respond to that.
The only factual statistics that I have is a few years back when I started this process, there was a study that was handed down to me from Tyler, Texas. And maybe we don't have a lot in common with Tyler, Texas, but we did in size.